It'll make you laugh. It'll upset you. But most importantly, it'll make you think. This is Dogma Debate with David Smalley.
Welcome to Dogma Debate. I'm your host, David Smalley, in studio now with some co-hosts. It's going to be nice bouncing stuff off other human beings that aren't superstitious. How you guys doing?
Great.
Fantastic.
Ian Harris, comedian extraordinaire, or I would refer to him as Comediocre.
Comediocre, that's right.
Is that your Twitter, Comediocre?
That is my Twitter, because I am Comediocre.
And Michael Cain.
Hello.
I'm sorry. Michael Cain, our news for the fourth listener guy, for people who are unaware of that. You're going to give us a live news segment tonight.
I am going to give it a wing.
Let's do it. Let's do that. I'm looking forward to that. So so glad you guys could join us. And I think the real reason people are tuning in on video is because Brandy's here.
Yeah, right.
So Lawrence Krauss is my guest. We'll be with him in just a second. He just released a new book. All three of us actually read it and loved it. I want to let everybody know we actually just launched on Patreon. Patreon.com/Dogma Debate is where you can get behind-the-scenes content, more interaction with us as far as live chats and private hangouts and stuff like that. Next week, keep an eye out. I'll be on Adam Carolla's podcast. We're recording on the 5th. Usually it either comes out on September 5th or 6th, the day of or the day after. Look for that in the first week of September. And I'll be with Sam Harris and Sarah Hayter on September 17th in Toronto, thanks to Penguin Philosophy. You can go to dogmadebate.com, get tickets to that live event. And we're also going to be live streaming it on dogmadebate.com, the audio at least. So check that out on dogmadebate.com. And then near the end of September, early October, I'll be joining Dave Rubin on his show. So check that out. Next week, I don't know if you guys heard the episode I did with PETA, and then I did the episode from the farms, because I went to the factory farms myself and sort of figured out what was going on, and stopped being vegetarian after I actually learned the truth of the process. Next week, Mercy for Animals is coming in studio to discuss this and maybe win me back. I don't know. But I'm interested in all the facts. So go listen to the PETA episode, December 315. Brandy, do you know off the top of your head what episode number the farming episode was?
No.
It's very recent. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
26, probably. 326.
Something like that.
Check that out. It's called Factory Farming versus David Smalley. And then Mercy for Animals is coming up next week. But right now, I'm pleased to introduce to you my friend and a guy who's, God, I got to tell you, I think I owe this guy tuition after reading this book. I've learned so much about physics thanks to him. He's so interesting, so fun to hang out with. Give it up for Lawrence Krauss joining us right now. Hello, Lawrence. How are you, sir?
I'll take it as a check, or you can money order. It's fine. But the tuition, I want you to know, is pretty high. So
yeah, I did 2 voiceovers for Vic Stenger's books, and I did a lot on string theory. He did multiverse. I did God the Failed Hypothesis and God and the Folly of Faith. Learned all kinds of stuff about quantum particle pairs and quantum mechanics, and that stuff doesn't stay in my head very long. And so listening to your book was a really good refresher on that stuff. But man, it's so thorough, so detailed. What sparked you to write this one?
What's the title of the book? I forget.
Oh, yeah. I am horrible at interviews. He's the author of The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far, which I love that title. Did you come up with that, or did the publishers do that to you?
No, I come up with my titles. Thank you.
Well, I've heard that sometimes authors will come up with titles.
Well, actually, it is true that I've come up with titles from my books that the publishers refused, but eventually we agreed on one. No, but The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far was if often, well, not always, but sometimes it's when I think about the title that I think about what way I want to do the book. It may sound ridiculous, but I kind of, that'd be fun. Like the physics of Star Trek was, I sort of convinced myself to do. Anyway, but I like the so far part. The Greatest Story Ever Told. Well, there's, what's amazing to me about that? I'm very proud of that book, first of all, but surprised me how many people immediately got upset because, it's about physics. It's not about religion, but the title and the fact that it's divided into 3 sections, Genesis, Exodus, and Revelations.
Yeah.
Some people were so offended by that. It amazed me. It just shocked me.
Yeah,
Because, of course, I was playing off that, the old greatest story ever told so far.
Well, yeah, and you start every chapter with a Bible verse,
Right.
which I thought was really interesting. And then it's usually a really cool Bible verse that most of us would get behind and say, yeah, that's really cool.
Well, the Bible is full of great, verses to steal from. But my point was, that's one greatest story. But this is really the greatest story. But it was really relating to something that's in popular culture, but I wasn't in that context making fun of the Bible. Of course, the Bible makes fun of itself, so you don't really have to do much there. But I mean, I do make some statements in the book, one or two about relationship to the Bible. But I was surprised. I guess it's interesting. There's some people said, "Oh, I would love this book if you just hadn't had those Bible quotes." I mean, I'm thinking, my goodness, what It surprises me. Anyway,
I was shocked to see a 1-star review on the book. It won. And I went and I looked at it and I went, who would give this 1-star review? And the guy said, Krauss is too quick to denounce God. And I went, oh, no, wait a minute.
I thought you were going to say, were you there?
It's funny because I wrote a piece which got a year or so ago for the New Yorker, which got virally in whatever. I'm saying every scientist should be a militant atheist, and my point was not that my point was that the minute you say anything, you're called a militant atheist. And I'm amazed in that book and in The Universe from Nothing, the total amount of time I spent talking about religion, maybe a couple of pages at most, that and yet people say, oh, I wish he hadn't dwelled so much on religion. And you just have to mention the word, and people suddenly say, how dare he spend his whole book talking about it? It's just an example of the fact that you cannot raise the issue, even in an intellectual sense, without people either closing their mind or immediately attacking.
Well, I thought it was brilliant the way you did it, because you would talk about some very existential idea from the Bible, and then you would go into detail about the science behind how something like that actually works, minus the supernatural. And you were thorough about the science, especially the history of the different physicists and where it all came from. It was very interesting. And then near the end, I would kind of tie that in my brain and go, that's why he read that Bible verse at the beginning. That totally makes sense. I thought it was great. I don't understand people getting offended by that at all.
That's why it's so threatening, because they immediately go, oh wow, this is explaining it in a way that makes actual sense, and it's threatening to everything they believe, their existence. I mean, just the words.
Maybe I don't know. It's just somehow quoting the Bible in vain. But I actually I like quotes. I search very hard, whether it's the Bible or not. There's a lot of wonderful things that have been said in human history, and I love choosing them carefully. And I was particularly pleased that I could find quotes in the Bible, ones that I'd never heard before, really, as I was searching, that were particularly appropriate, even in a subtle way. I'm glad you picked up on that, because sometimes you wonder, what the hell does this have to do with this chapter? Yeah. And I hoped people by the end would kind of realize.
Oh man, I would say probably the 5th or 6th chapter, I would hear the Bible verse and go, "Oh, how are you going to get out of this one, Krauss?
Yeah. What's this have to do with it?
How are you going to get out of this? Obviously, this is supernatural." Yeah, so I thought it's very well done. I really hope people check it out, and you did a great job with the audiobook. You and I did Fear of Physics together in studio, so I know how hard you work on those.
I enjoyed doing that a lot with you, but I do enjoy. Yeah, I like the challenge of doing the audiobooks. For books like mine, I think it's particularly important, in my opinion, for the author, for me to read it, because often partly because I write books to be read, and then an audiobook is not read, it's listened to, and sometimes you have to change things to make it clearer. And if an actor were doing it, I don't think they'd know how to change it. And I can knowing the content, can do it. And it's a lot of fun and a challenge, and it is always one of the more anxiety-provoking things to sit in a small room and look at a big pile of paper and say, gee, I have to read that.
Ian, you do a lot of voiceover work like I do. Have you ever done an audiobook?
I have not, but that's partly because I'm dyslexic, and it takes me forever to read. When I do voiceover, I memorize my scripts.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Nice.
Just so you can read the book backwards. Maybe you could do Hebrew books.
That editing would be a nightmare.
Yeah, the guy,
Oh, man,
the guy
it's-
who does our voiceovers for the beginning of the show, the guy that the very opening voice you hear, he's actually legally blind. He has it actually plays the script in one ear and he reads it as he's listening to it.
wow.
So I sent him the script and he puts it into a system so he actually can't read it. He does it all. I've hinted at him forever that I want to bring him on the show and talk to him about how it all works. But
I have to. This is totally off topic. I don't know what the topic is, but this is probably off at whatever it is. Secret, which I guess is now not going to be secret, but what the heck? Speaking of voiceovers, the most difficult thing I've done a lot of movies now, but the hardest thing I ever had, if you watch The Unbelievers, then you watch the segment in the Sydney Opera House, which is about 6 minutes long, there were 4 microphones during that, and essentially all the ones on me failed. So I had to redo that in ADR, as they call it. I had to go in a studio and record that dialogue with the ums and ahs and everything. And so I'm very proud that when you see it, it still looks like I was saying it at the time.
It doesn't look like a dubbed Godzilla movie.
It was really hard. It took 8 hours, I think, for us to get it those 5 minutes exactly right with the same sounds and the same.
Ian,
It's easier to do script ADR because then you're reading script, but trying to do ADR for just standard conversation, which is so colloquial.
Documentary.
Anyway,
yeah, no, that would be really difficult. And I know, Ian, you've done it for...
I do voice match for people.
You do voice matches.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say who you've done it for?
Yeah, I've done Bruce Willis. I've done Cat Williams. I've done, Anderson Silva, who's a fighter. And then sometimes it's that. It's that they say something and it's muffled, or they change a word for some reason. So the sentence has 2 word changes, but they don't want to spend $100,000 to bring that person in the studio. So I have to say the exact same sentence.
So they just call your cheap ass and go,
Right,
hey,
exactly.
can you sound like this guy?
Trump's right. It's all fake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can. Sometimes it's animation too. Like sometimes somebody does something.
I think I would rather do that than what Lawrence is talking about. He had to do, like going back and try to recreate casual conversation. Where the breathing, the tone, everything in the room is different.
And it's amazing. You learn a lot about yourself and how you sometimes sort of stutter and the pauses. It was really a learning experience and very humbling.
And
but anyway,
we all 3 did the audiobook, right? Like all 3 of us. Yeah. I absolutely loved it. I think it was kind of a mix of like Richard Feynman and Bill Bryson had a love child, and you came in and really did that storytelling component well. And a lot of times the authors don't read their stories well. I feel like they're too close to them, and it's sort of unpersonal or impersonal. And I feel like that was never brought across in the book at all. Like it was very engaging.
I'm glad. I appreciate it. I mean, it is a story, and I tried to tell it as a story, and again, that meant a lot to me. In fact, there were parts of the story that go into detail. My publisher said, "Oh, skip all that." I said, "Well, if you skip the detail or the red herrings, then it's not the greatest story anymore. It's kind of obvious. You want a good mystery story is good because it takes you places and it's not and it bends your mind. So, but I'm glad to hear you say that. I enjoyed telling this story, and I think also another. Well, we're going off on a weird tangent, but another thing I've had when I write books, copy editors and sometimes publishers want you to take yourself away from the book. They want you to remove the personal. And I think especially a science book, having a personal connection to the story is important. And I think the audience likes to read that. I think they don't want it to be completely impersonal.
Yeah, you referencing your connection to some of these people, I think was huge. It really makes it a little more attainable for like the normal person. We hear Nobel laureate and we have no idea what that's like to be around, but we kind of connect with you through social media and things. Then we see you connect to a Nobel laureate, and it kind of brings us one step closer to that odd out.
I actually had that thought listening to it. I thought to myself, because being a voiceover person, I know people who do. I have a friend that's done hundreds of books, and he's got an amazing voice. And I thought to myself, sometimes the authors read it, sometimes they have a professional voiceover read it. And I thought to myself, this wouldn't be as good with a professional voiceover reader because of the passion and the technicality of some of the stuff that you actually want somebody who knows what they're talking about and somebody who actually can explain it properly and get behind it.
So
and I actually had that thought.
Yeah, sometimes the author is not the best person to read their book.
Sometimes they are.
Most authors are.
Stephen King.
Even if right. Even if they're not professional voice actors or haven't done it before. Jerry DeWitt's a perfect example. He had never done voice work before. I think we did every sentence 3 or 4 times. He was at my studio for 9 days, and we joked about it forever on this. I mean, Lawrence and I did Fear of Physics in 2 days or 2.5 days. And it took Jerry and I 9 days. It was hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, I was able to get
but I love that. But I love his accent, and I love the passion he brought to the stories. And sometimes he was actually crying during some of the recordings, and because it was his real life. And so nothing could ever replace that. No. Yeah. What were you saying, Lawrence?
Nothing could ever replace whatever it is we're about to talk about.
Well, speaking of Richard Feynman, you and I were I forgot where we were together, and I asked you something about how much Feynman inspired you, and you shocked me because I said, "What did he teach you?" And you said, "He taught me to dance." And then you smiled, and I said, "Dance?" And you said, "Well, he taught me not to care that people were watching me dance." And I just thought that was that was impactful to me. I don't know if you even remember the conversation.
It was impactful to me too. I mean, he taught me to let go and not care, of course, and get into it. Yeah, it was one of the things. I was very lucky.
I was expecting to hear some theoretical physicist jargon I wasn't going to understand, and he was like, taught me to dance.
He's not that guy, though.
What?
He was that freewheeling physicist.
It's nice that there's one picture of me talking to Feynman that's online, and it was in a magazine when I was a long time ago when I was a kid. And I was very happy there that at least we weren't talking about dancing or sex. We were actually talking about physics. So it's a picture of us talking physics. But Feynman was a remarkable human being in many ways, and so he taught me to have adventures too, and science adventures, but basically a message I think you get when you read Feynman is to not be afraid to go where you want to go, and that was true in the dance floor as well as in the understanding the universe.
I love it,
and which I don't know if we captured. See, I'm going to do your job for you here. Okay. I don't know if we captured it on a book that I think I wrote.
Yeah, so M.J. Mouton wrote the Tiny Thinkers series. Basically, we take books or stories. Or Mario does really. He takes these stories of real life scientists who changed the world, and he retells them as though they were a kid going on an adventure. The first one's Charlie and the Tortoise. Mm-hmm. Most of my listeners know about that. It's in the Tiny Thinker series.
I gave them away as Christmas presents.
Awesome. It's that one's about Charles Darwin, but it's like a little boy going on an adventure. Well, this next book 2 is called Richie Doodles. And it's about this little boy named Richie who likes to draw symbols instead of doing math to show and explain how particles can pass through your thumb and all kinds of cool stuff. And in the end of the book, we always say Richie grew up to be known as Richard Feynman, and then it has actual facts about the real Richie. And then at the end, it'll say, can you think of an adventure you'd like to go on? Lawrence Krauss wrote the foreword for this one. Awesome. And you can't imagine Lawrence Krauss writing a foreword for a children's book. You're like, they're never going to understand it. No, he did a very good job and broke it down as to how much Richard Feynman inspired him. And I'm really looking forward to this coming out. It's coming out in February.
I was pleased to. I think children's books are really important. I haven't written one. It's hard. I've thought of doing it because I think it's really important. So I was really happy to get aboard that project.
Yeah, but you speak English and geek really well, so it translates.
Well, I wonder too. Just in terms of nowadays science. It's cool. It's in the
STEM.
Yeah, it wasn't like that when we were kids.
No, and I'm finding though that we're realizing, especially like in this conversation and in general. I talked to Lawrence. He did a little thing for my comedy special, and I talked about art and science and different things. And I'm surprised at how many. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I think most people would be surprised at how artistic and how I don't know what the word is, but that many scientists are. I guess artistic is the word, and I wonder often how much art or how much goes into science. You know what I mean? In a sense that
they're clever.
Thinking.
I've done some things with a friend of mine who you probably heard of, an actor named Alan Alda, and
maybe
and who's very
name dropper.
And And yeah, we did a great dialogue in New York City, which I think is, you can see online at the New York Public Library, actually for the day this book came out. But earlier, Alan had talked on stage, and it was wonderful because it was an event, with all these sort of actor types and everything with New York City, and he said, science requires creativity, art requires precision, and I just love that he flipped. Yeah. He flipped the normal descriptions, because it surprised me, how many people are called artists, and as if science in some ways isn't akin to art, and vice versa. Anything you're working on with passion and intensity has characteristics of both, and I think that's really important. And and I've said it many times before, that for me, that's what I try and do, is connect science and culture, because science is part of our culture, and it's too often separate from it. And it doesn't have to be. It can be funny, I think, and it can be exciting and colorful, and all of those characteristics. And speaking of kids, when I often say, when I go speaking, I was going to say when I speak to the public, but even more carefully when I speak to a university lecture hall, I try and think, okay, if I'm speaking to a 10-year-old, then maybe some of the faculty will understand.
I think
know your audience.
A lot of times, I mean, when I was a kid, I know in my school they did this. I don't know how it was for you guys, but for me, they sort of split it. They sort of almost made it seem like you had to choose one. Like either you were going to be a scientist. Yeah, you were either going to be good at science and math, or you were going to be creative. They even had us take tests to go, are you left-brained or right-brained? Yep. And I always hated that.
Are you going to art and band, or are you going to biology and chemistry?
They never allowed this.
It's always like you take something from column, it's like a Chinese restaurant. Choose something from column B. You're doing history, and you have to suffer through the science, but it's really something separate, and it's not related. And I really didn't like that. I mean, I taught at Yale for many years, and I had a problem with that, because a lot of students sort of never even came up to the science part of campuses. But how can you call yourself, well, in fact, you can't, in my opinion. And 100 years ago, you couldn't call yourself literate if you didn't have some passing understanding of the world around you. And it is amazing that, if you don't know what World War II was, you're illiterate, or if you never heard of Shakespeare, you're illiterate. But how many people are willing to say, I'm quite educated, but I just don't understand anything about science? Because it's not beyond people's understanding. It's lazy thinking to just say, I don't want to know that stuff, or I don't even want to understand the general characteristics of it. And once again, as I've often said, we have this double standard. You don't have to be a musician to enjoy music. You don't have to be an artist to enjoy art. But some reason people say, well, I don't have that right brain or left brain. I can't get science. And somehow you have to be a scientist to enjoy science, and it doesn't have to be that way. And that's part of my goal in my writing and speaking and otherwise, is to help try and convince people of that.
Well, writing that forward definitely did that, because I think that's going to bring a lot of people, especially young kids, into that mindset that they don't have to choose. You're artistic, you're creative, but you know what? If you love it, maybe you can bring an artistic level to that. It doesn't have to go away. So.
And one of the great things about Feynman was listening to him with his Long Island accent, and I mean, he talked. I think one of the reasons he was so attractive to people is he talked like a normal human being, right? Not even so, he's talked like Ralph Cramden. Anyway, for young people, that's the honeymooners, Jackie Gleason. But I mean,
did he say to the moon a lot? Just wondering.
Anyway, I think it's important, because you don't have to wrap things up. Any way to explain something that works is just as good as any other way. It doesn't have to be wrapped up in long, many-letter words.
Mm-hmm. You and I were talking one time, and I think my daughter either chimed into the conversation or she told me to ask you. I don't remember, but she wanted to know. She said, "Okay, we get to the far end of the universe," and you went, "Yeah," and then she went, "What's right on the other side?" and we had that conversation for a while, and I remember you end up saying that at the time you said, "I think if you could see far enough, that the universe actually bends, and if you can see far enough, you could probably see the back of your own head." Do you still stand by that, and what do you mean by that? Because I've thought about that probably the last 2 years since you said it to me.
Well, they're great. It's great. It was a great question. And by the way, I think the simplest answer to many of these questions, and the important one, which I often say is the most important, is I don't know, and which more people scientists, teachers, and parents said those words. Because then you can say, I don't know, but let's try and think about it or find out.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a voyage of discovery instead of being, just regurgitating information. And kids especially like to discover things. And so that's how we should teach them. But what our best idea, and I gave it in A Universe from Nothing in my book before this last one, if you want to create a universe from nothing without any supernatural shenanigans, then given the physics we know, it's most likely to imagine that you could do it by creating what's called a closed universe, which is a universe that basically curves in on itself. And it's like going, the three-dimensional version you can't picture, but the two-dimensional version you can think of as the surface of a sphere, where you go around the sphere and you come back to where you began. And similarly, in a closed universe, if a light ray goes out, and doesn't extinguish anywhere, it'll go around the universe and come back to where it began. And so that's the universe that, according to physics we know, is most likely created from nothing, with zero total energy by the laws of physics. And so even though we don't see it that way, if I had to bet, I bet on the very large scales, larger than we can see, and by the way, larger than we may ever be able to see, because the universe is expanding on its larger scales faster than light. Nevertheless, I would bet it looks like that, and so that's my best bet. But I wouldn't. But the great thing about these things is that it's not a bet I'm going to lose.
That's a good point. Yeah. One last thing before you go, we've got to touch on dark matter. It was either the last chapter or the chapter before last. You said it was either in the epilogue of the last chapter. I don't remember, but it was something along the lines of dark matter. The best we can figure is probably comprised of new particles not yet observed. What does that mean?
Well, it means it's made of particles that are not the same as anything that make you up, or your studio, or the Earth, or the sun, or the stars. Not made of protons, or neutrons, or electrons, or any of the particles that make up normal matter. And one of the reasons it's dark, it doesn't shine, is because it doesn't interact by the interactions that make you and I possible. The electromagnetism is what governs the chemistry of our bodies, and is the reason you don't fall through that chair you're sitting on right now, or this floor of the studio. It's the electric interactions of the atoms in your body with the atoms in the ground or the chair. Dark matter, we think, is something that's so weakly interacting that it basically does not only not interact with light, but more or less flows. The only force it really feels any great strength, or essentially the only force, is gravity. The other force it feels are so weak that what makes it exciting is not just that we think that's the case, because we know how many protons and neutrons are in the universe, and there's more stuff out there than can be accounted for by the protons and neutrons. But it means that dark matter isn't just cosmic. It isn't just something that's out there. It's in your studio right now. It's in my...
That's so cool.
Where I'm talking from. It's going through your body and my body.
Ooh.
And that means we can do experiments here on Earth to look for it. Gives it an immediacy that's incredibly exciting. And one of the things I did 25 or 30 years ago was propose experiments that are now being done underground to look for dark matter. And I think that the fact that, first of all, most of the stuff in the universe is not made of the same stuff as us is remarkable. And secondly, the fact that we might do experiments here on Earth to figure out what makes up most of the mass in the universe is incredibly exciting, because it means some kid who's listening to your show may be the one who figures out the experiment. It means, when I grew up, what got me excited into physics when I first decided to do it is the realization, and it was reading a book by Feynman, in fact, realizing that it wasn't all done, that it wasn't all done 200 years ago by dead white men, that it was alive, that there were full of mysteries yet remaining to be solved. And that it's the mysteries that keep us going in life. And for me, it's the mysteries that make science so exciting. And dark matter, we know it's out there. We don't know what it is. It's a mystery to find out, but we may be able to do it here on Earth. And in this decade or the next decade, make a discovery that'll completely change our picture of what makes up the universe.
So speaking of that, I'm gonna close this out as we say goodbye to Lawrence Krauss. I'm gonna close this out with a clip. I've got to play this, Lawrence, only because it's been a while since you've been on the show.
Okay.
And of course, you can hang up and listen, but it's of a very cool surprise. Lawrence did for a really cool kid, and I can't wait to play this. I've got to share that story with them. So Lawrence, thank you so much for not only writing the book but for joining us today. The book is The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Audible. Everywhere you can find books. Go pick it up. It's a treat. Lawrence, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks. It's always fun to be on, and you guys take care.
All right. See you later.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
So this is the clip that I've got to share with you. I got an email, and I'm going to set it up in the clip, so I won't do too much here. But I got an email that every now and then you just get one you can't look past. You have to stop. You have to address it. After this clip, we're going to be speaking with an expert in disaster management, Dr. Samantha Montano, about the disaster recovery efforts, about what Foundation Beyond Belief is doing, what humanists can do to help the folks in Texas, and what humanists should not do at attempting to help the folks in Texas. We're going to talk about that now. But here's what happened on an earlier episode of Dogma Debate when a certain young fan was really interested in Lawrence Krauss books. Okay, here she comes.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay, I think we're all set. How are you?
Go ahead. I couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, okay. I said, I think we're all set. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Getting over some allergy stuff, but we're fighting through it. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna be recording this for the show, and I just want to make sure you're cool with that, and we can talk with him, and everything's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic, because I just want to make sure we have permission to broadcast him. And you're his grandma, right?
Yeah.
And is that what he calls you, grandma?
Mama.
What's that, mama?
Yeah, Mama.
Mama. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So does he know I'm calling?
Yeah, I've got you on speakerphone right now. We've just been about beside ourselves here.
Oh, awesome. That is so cool. So hi, Tyler. How are you?
Pretty good.
Well, I wanted to call and tell you happy birthday, and I wanted all of our listeners to hear what an awesome young scientist you are. So I know you're really into science books, and I think Memaw has a surprise for you. And I don't know if you can have the surprises just yet, or maybe he can. I'm not sure, but they're coming right soon, Memaw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here's what's happening, Tyler. I get to be the guy that tells you all the good news. You're getting a couple of books, a couple of really cool books from a really cool guy. I'm sure you know all about Lawrence Krauss, right?
Yeah.
Your mamaw has picked you up A Universe from Nothing by Lawrence Krauss and Adam by Lawrence Krauss. And, I've interviewed him one time, actually a couple of times on my show. I've actually talked to him, and he's a really nice guy. And we reached out to him, and he agreed that if your mamaw sends those books to him, he will actually sign them just for you for your birthday and send them back.
I told you. I'm sorry, I'm crying again, but I'm so excited for him. Oh, what do you think, Tyler? That is awesome.
Are you happy with that, Tyler? Hey, Tyler, come a little closer to the phone. I can barely hear you.
That's amazing.
You really like Lawrence. He's a pretty cool guy.
And we've been sitting here watching videos on YouTube of some of his lectures this morning, actually.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, Tyler, look, I want you to have a really happy birthday. And I know it was yesterday. And what are you? You're 13 now?
Yeah.
And you're super interested in science?
Yes.
Well, I can't think of any other way, to get you started and to keep you inspired. But I do have one more little thing for you, if you don't mind, if you have a few more seconds to talk to me here.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Tyler?
Yeah.
I have someone here with me that wants to say hi to you.
Yeah.
Hi, Tyler. This is Lawrence Krauss. I wanted to wish you a
Oh
happy.
my God!
I hope you're having a great birthday, and I really want to encourage your interest in science. And it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh my God! Oh, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Tyler. Are you there? Are you still there?
I'm here. Oh my God.
That's great. Well, I was I was about your age when I was reading books and getting interested in science myself, and so I thought when David asked me, it'd be a pleasure to just have a little chat and just tell you I'm excited about what you're excited in, and to keep on enjoying it and keep on doing what you're doing. Really.
It's just awesome.
Tyler, what parts of science interest you most? Is there anything in particular that you like studying?
Physics, mainly physics, and just like you just inspire me so much.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be in that position. I appreciate it, and I liked lots of different subjects when I was your age. And of course, physics was one of them. And the bottom line is to just do whatever you enjoy. Just keep on doing what you enjoy, and keep remembering why you enjoy it. And if you keep doing that, then whatever you do in the future, whether it's physics or anything else, then you'll be good at it.
Thank you.
Tyler, before we go, do you have anything you've ever wanted to ask Lawrence Krauss? He's here on the phone right now. Before we hang up, anything you want to know? Anything you want to ask him?
I can't really think of anything. I'm just so flabbergasted right now.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, you just hope you enjoy the books when you get them, and I just finished a new book, and it'll be out next year. So hopefully by then you'll have finished these ones. And good luck in your studies, and have a great birthday. Have a great weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. My pleasure.
All right, Tyler. Happy birthday. I hope you've enjoyed it. Sarah, thank you for everything you're doing to inspire this young man to keep on studying science. We need more kids like him. So thank you for all your support.
You really do. Thank you so much for everything you did. That was wow.
Awesome.
So much.
All right. And Lawrence, thank you so much. You've made this kid's day. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Goodbye. Bye, Tyler.
Bye. Thank you.
Extreme liberals call him conservative. Right-wing nuts call him a social justice warrior. That means he can only be one thing: reasonable. Tune in each week to hear David Smalley tear down the dogma of everyone you love. No one is safe from the facts. Subscribe now on iTunes or Podcast One.